call this meeting of the Pittsburg City Commission to order. If you all stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Be seated. All right, so we'll begin the meeting with public input session. So if anyone is here to talk for any reason to the board, you can come up to the podium and do so at this time. Go ahead. If you wouldn't mind, state your name and your address.
My name is Wayne Bockelman. I live at 205 West Euclid here in Pittsburgh. And I have a complaint with the city. It's about non-enforcement of one of its ordinances. This failure affects my quality of life here in Pittsburgh and that of Megan Corrigan, with whom I reside. Specifically, next door to us is in a residential neighborhood is a kennel that has been operating without a permit for 2.5 years. They are a business. They charge up to $500 in adoption fees for a puppy. They operate under the name Gypsy Soul Rottweiler Rescue. They specialize in Rottweilers, though they have other dogs as well. Specifically, they obtain animals that cannot be controlled by their owners or are given up to adoption or given up to shelters for adoption. They bring them to this residential neighborhood here in Pittsburgh where they attempt to rehabilitate them. They have brought in problem dogs from throughout the state and across the country, including Oklahoma, Texas, Georgia, and Arizona. I don't have a problem with their goals. I do have a problem with their attempting them in a residential neighborhood here in Pittsburgh. Dogs bark at us when we're in our yard. They bark at us at night and wake us up. We have spent numerous nights with very little sleep. Dogs have escaped from their yard on many occasions. Once, while taking a walk in the neighborhood, 2 large dogs jumped over their fence, came up to us, and barked at us. As a result, Megan and I have pretty much given up walking around in our neighborhood. One Rottweiler was in their pen about a dozen feet from our yard for close to a year, barking, keeping us awake at night, barking whenever we went into the yard, barking when we exited our rear door. It eventually had to be put to sleep because it was deemed uncontrollable. Gypsy Soul Rottweiler Rescue is a kennel and as such requires a special use permit according to the zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations for the city of Pittsburgh. The definition of a kennel is any place, area, lot, building, or structure where more than 4 dogs are kept for any purpose. That's Article 1-103, -106, and -107 in definitions. Any residents in the city of Pittsburgh may legally have up to 4 dogs. I have personally counted 10 dogs in the yard of Gypsy Soul Rottweiler Rescue, and they have had more. As a kennel, they require a special use permit as enumerated under Article 30 of Pittsburgh zoning ordinance. Specifically, the following conditional uses may be approved by the governing body as provided in this article. Number 30-104.22, kennels, either breeding or boarding, can be approved, provided pens or open kennels shall be located at least 50 feet from the front lot line and at least 30 feet from any side or rear lot line. That is the reason they are unable to obtain a special use permit for a kennel. The city of Pittsburgh has been less than helpful in resolving this situation. We had numerous complaints to animal control about barking dogs and dogs running at large, both in violation of city nuisance ordinances, all to no avail. Finally, on May 16th of 2017, we met with Zoning Commissioner Dexter Neisler in City Hall, city ordinances in hand. We were able to convince him with text highlighted that 1, Gypsy Soul Rottweiler Rescue was a kennel and needed a special use permit. 2, Gypsy Soul Rottweiler Rescue did not have a special use permit. We had been told the opposite on both of these counts on previous occasions. Dexter Neisler had told us that only neighborhoods zoned P, like Countryside and those southeast of the hospital, required permits. Another zoning official had told us, when asked specifically whether they had a special use permit, they have all that stuff. When we asked to see the special use permit, they said it was not public record. Much more has happened in the interim, but today, over 7 months after the zoning office was made aware of the situation, Gypsy Soul Rottweiler Rescue remains in operation without a permit, in violation of city ordinances, with no indication that the city has any intent of intervening. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. I think it's horrible that the city has not done something about that. I think this organization came to us for a special permit earlier, is that correct? Or someone else did?
They did.
And at the time, I spoke against it because I don't like having a group of dogs next door to me bothering me at will and not being taken care of correctly. All this kind of thing, it's fine if they live out in the country where they don't impose on their neighbors, but when you live next door to people, I think you have to respect them, and I certainly understand your issue. And I hope that the city can revisit that and get it taken care of. And I appreciate you coming before us and dealing with it.
I'd just like to follow up. This is the first I've heard of this, and evidently it's been going on for some time. And I applaud you for going through the channels and also coming and speaking to us in a public forum. And like Patrick said, hopefully something can resolve this issue for you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, Wayne.
Thank you, Wayne. Is there anyone else here that would like to speak for public forum? If not, we'll close public forum, or public input, and move on to the reorganization of the Board of Commissioners. So, first item on the agenda, mayor elected from members of the governing body.
I'd like to make a motion that Jeremy Johnson be the next mayor of the city of Pittsburgh.
I second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to have myself as mayor for the upcoming city commission. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Which brings us to the second thing on the agenda, the new mayor sworn in and seated by the city clerk.
I can't see. I get you to raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Kansas,
and the Constitution of the State of Kansas,
and faithfully discharge the duties
and faithfully discharge the duties
of mayor
of mayor
for the city of Pittsburg, Kansas.
for the city of Pittsburgh, Kansas.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
So, thank you, Tam.
Seat you?
I was gonna say, you need to take these. Is that better?
Yes, thank you. I
Okay.
just.
All right. The next item on the agenda, the president of the Board of Commissioners elected from the members of the governing body.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to nominate Patrick O'Brien as president of the board.
And Mr. Mayor, I'd like to nominate Chuck Munsell as president of the board.
I'll second Patrick's nomination. To nominate Patrick.
Okay.
Gotcha.
All right. So in the case of a double nomination with a single one,
We need a second in order to go to a vote, so.
okay, so proceed to the nomination for Patrick.
You want to take a vote on that?
Okay, so we will be voting on Patrick as being the president of the board sworn in, or the president of the Board of Commissioners. All those in favor of Patrick being sworn in as the president of the board, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Patrick, if you will go up and have Tammy swear you in.
I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Kansas,
and the Constitution of the State of Kansas,
and faithfully discharge the duties
and faithfully discharge the duties
of President of the Board of Commissioners
of President of the Board of Commissioners
for the City of Pittsburg, Kansas.
for the City of Pittsburg, Kansas.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Patrick. All right, so we'll move on to the consent agenda. Are there any items that need to be moved from the consent agenda? If there are none, I will take a motion to,
So move.
I second it.
all right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Roll call vote.
Chenoweth,
Here, or I?
Johnson,
Aye.
McNay,
Aye.
Munsell,
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Passes. Moving on to the main agenda, consider the following. Item A, property acquisition, 205 North Rouse. Consider the recommendation of the Economic Development Advisory Committee, EDAC, to acquire the property located at 205 North Rouse for the purchase price of $16,000. Becky.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I had a presentation for you, but as what happened to me earlier today, the computer is 24% complete of updating. So rather than waiting for it to finish, I'll just kind of try to describe what's happening. You are probably familiar with the Mid-City Renaissance Plan, which is the redevelopment of 300 some acres around the Mission Clay area. At the corner of 4th and Rouse, specifically the southwest corner, that plan recommended that we reconfigure that area to contain recreational use, largely because the land itself is in a floodplain. So the long-term goal would be to acquire the bulk of that corner and install, one of the recommendations was sports fields, one recommendation was a skate park, and then, of course, we could be creative as we move forward throughout that plan. About a month and a half ago, I was approached out of the blue by an owner of the parcel that's at 205 North Rouse. There's one single house on the west side of the road, who said he no longer has an interest in that house. It was a family house that had been passed on, and there's no family here anymore, and he was wanting to sell it, but knew that the city had a plan and wanted to know if we would like to express interest in it first, and so that we could avoid realtor fees, et cetera, et cetera. He originally asked for about $20,000. We came to an agreement that based on the assessed value and the potential for a lien that exists on the property, that we could commit $16,000 in total. That would take care of the lien on the property and the transfer of the real estate. And that would allow then the city to be in control of that parcel. Whether we repurposed the structure to be part of our Parks and Recs department, or whether we saw fit to move it to another location, that could be determined later. But we approached the EDAC and explained the situation and how it fits into the overall redevelopment of the center of the community. And their recommendation, I believe, is to grant the $16,000 for the acquisition of that property. So that's what's before you, and I'm here to ask questions, or answer questions.
What else along that stretch does the city own? Is any of it public property?
Yeah, that's a great question. So on the north side of 4th and Rouse, the northwest corner, we own 2 parcels. They're nicely mowed. They look like beautiful parkland currently. On the south side, on the southwest quadrant, We own 3 parcels in succession there. I might be able to get into this machine now. Nope. We own 3 parcels that lead up to that house. And then there's 1 parcel after that that we still haven't acquired, but that would be kind of next in line. There's already a cutout in the curb from Rouse in, so if we wanted to create a parking lot, that already exists without a whole lot of extra effort.
Are there any other questions?
There's no further discussion. I move to approve.
Second?
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. Item B, South Rouse Widening and Multi-Use Path Project. Consider the recommendation of the Kansas Department of Transportation, KDOT, to award the bid for the South Rouse Widening and Multi-Use Path Project to Mission Construction Company Incorporated of St. Paul, Kansas, based on their low bid in the amount of $3,145,385, and direct city staff to remit $2,881,000 to KDOT for the city's share of the costs associated with the project. Cameron.
Mayor, Commissioners, KDOT opened bids on December 13th. They had 7 bidders. Between the high and the low, there's about only 20% spread between them. For a project this size, it's rather remarkable. And the difference between the lowest bidders was less than 2%. So we had very competitive, very strong bids through that. As part of this project, we do have the federal dollars that are paying for a portion of the trail project. And so the full $660,000 from the state is being contributed to that. That's why with the engineering services as well as the construction, our share of that project is less.
How much did we have budgeted for that project?
We had bonded $4.5 million for that, so we got very good bids on this. Both the engineer estimate that our consultant did as well as KDOT were about $4.4 million, and again, our 2 estimates were within 5% of each other, so this was a very aggressive, very good bid.
If we approve this, when will the construction start on this project?
The construction would start, their early start date is as soon as all of their KDOT paperwork is met and in place, and the latest that it would start would be April 2nd.
And the finish date?
They have 170 working days in the contract. So at the end of that 170 days is the limit of their contract.
And we've used this company before.
Yes, they've done work for us and others before.
If this does happen to pass, I think it would be it behoove us to contact all of the people who reside along that street with a letter or something like this to inform them what's going on. I've had several people contact me about if it was going to happen, when it was going to happen, but they really need a heads up so they can make their plan.
We've been in contact throughout, and I've had before, I've talked to someone, then they turn around and call someone else just to make sure. So, but we are definitely going to reach out to them, let them know we do have a contractor in hand, and we're talking with the contractor, start setting up lines of communication, because this is going to be, well, you think just adding another lane and some storm sewer is a simple project. When you go out there and you look at trying to construct in that tight area that we do have, it is going to be very complicated.
Cameron, have the utilities been moved, or has that been anything done so far?
Yes, utilities been moved. I've been waiting to get to final clearance. I think Kansas Gas and Westar. I think Westar is in process of wrapping up, and Kansas Gas was supposed to be already, but I haven't gotten confirmation yet.
Now, I've asked you this several times on this project, but there will always be a lane of traffic open during the construction part.
We're expecting to have 2 lanes of traffic, one each direction. There may be times where they're moving equipment or having something where there might be a momentary closure of traffic, but expect to have access to all properties throughout the project.
Cameron, can you briefly describe sort of what the process for the project will be?
As far as the construction, what we had laid out, again, this could change depending on what the contractor has in mind. They are free to present other alternatives to, on their progression of the project. What we had in the bid was for the contractor to do the storm sewer work initially, because all of the ditches will be going away along that project. So we'll be off to either side putting in the storm sewer. The second phase would be coming in, and we'd be building the east portion of the roadway first, and we'd be having traffic slide over. One lane would be where the future trail will be. The other lane will be on basically what ultimately will be the southbound lane. So everything will slide to the west. We'll construct that east side, and then we'll slide traffic over. We'll build the west half of the roadway, still have traffic coming down the west side southbound, heading northbound on the east side of the roadway. And then the final would be to, now we've got the road completely built, to go and build the trail.
Are we making provisions for expanding residents out that direction?
Right, and that's one of the primary reasons for trying to do this construction now, before that area builds up further and has additional traffic in there, trying to make an improvement like that with even more traffic and impact would be.
And the utilities are not going to be in the roadway, is that not under the pavement?
Correct, but there'll be crossings as they go underneath there, but none of them are running alongside the roadway. They're outside underneath the green space or underneath the trail and sidewalk.
The main reason we haven't, Cameron doesn't have a final construction schedule, so until he does, we didn't want to go back to the people that we've already talked to 3 times and said, hey, it's coming. We want to go back to them with basically what he laid out today, which hopefully is the final schedule, and give them some broad parameters about this is when the start date is, this is anticipated completion date, and then without getting into too much detail, in general, this is how the traffic will move. But that's a great suggestion, and we will be following up with a letter, and probably, Cameron doesn't know it yet, but at least one public meeting out there just to have the chance for them to answer questions, because it has been a very long project, and some people have probably even forgot that instead of just doing the trail, we're now doing the entire roadway, which is going to be significant.
You know, I mean, it's just my thought. I don't know that it wouldn't behoove us to get a letter out ASAP to say that the bid has been let, that it's passed, and given the parameters of when it might start and how many days it will take and that kind of thing, and then give them a final follow-up letter. I mean, I know stamps are 50 cents a piece now, but I think that we could take that out of our budget somewhere.
Assuming you approve it, then we would be much more comfortable sending out a letter saying it's approved. So, yes, if you guys approve it today, we can definitely get a letter out right away.
If there's no more questions, I move to approve.
I second it.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the motion. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you, Cameron. Item C, plat, Pittsburg Community Middle School. The Planning Commission / Board of Zoning Appeals in its meeting of November 27th, 2017, voted unanimously to recommend governing body the approval of the short form plat of the Pittsburg Community Middle School, PCMS, properties located in the 1300 block of North Broadway.
What you have before you is just basically a consolidating plat. There are quite a number of parcels there that made up the middle school campus. This cleans that up and eliminates any questions about setbacks, easements, anything, so that the school can move forward with their plans.
Are there any questions?
No questions, I move to approve.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you, Cameron. Item D, ordinance number G-1277. Consider adopting ordinance number G-1277, amending section 2-33 of the Pittsburgh City Code concerning compensation of Pittsburgh City Commissioners.
Mayor, Commissioners, this is the, I guess what would it feel like probably the third step in a process to propose that instead of the commissioners working on a volunteer basis, they would actually be compensated for their time. As you recall, Commissioner Ketterman introduced the idea at the second of the last meeting of 2017. We had a discussion at the final meeting of 2017, and although it was approved that we wanted to move forward with it, we didn't have an ordinance drafted for you to actually pass. And now that we have switched commissions, it's the awkward moment of the ordinance is now in front of you to vote on. So that is kind of how we got here. The ordinance that is before you is the one that was approved in theory at the last meeting. And we're here to answer any questions, and appreciate your allowing us to bring this back on your first meeting as a new commission to consider increasing your own pay, which we understand is somewhat clunky, but I would blame the state for this one, since their statute that moved the elections, just to be clear, actually named the day that the former commission had to leave office. So usually we just do that on the same day that you begin office, but in this case, since it was named, that day was January 8th, and it's created this interesting opportunity for a new commission to review the last ordinance. And if anybody has anything to add to that, to try to clear it up, feel free, but that's how we got here.
I find this very awkward. I think if I'd been at the sitting at the table at the December meeting, I would not have approved this, primarily along the lines of what Jeremy talked about. You know, our model of city government is a city manager. However, you know, and the two halves of the brains that go back and forth, you know, we like to encourage younger people to run for office, and, you know, they may need nominal fee or nominal monies for childcare, et cetera. So I won't know my vote until I say my vote. I mean, really,
I understand.
Well,
did I raise something, Jeremy? Did you think about?
I thought
No.
we solved this at the last meeting, but then I found out I was incorrect about that. I spoke in favor of this. Being on the city commission now for a number of years, I can see the reason for this. It's not without precedent. Many of our cities around us give some form of compensation, and the commissioners have the ability to accept it or not accept it. Also, I've had a number of, I probably had more people talk to me about this than anything else. And I've never had one negative comment about it, except that, well, I had several people say, well, now you can afford to retire. But you know, that's about the gist of all of the comments that I have received. So, I mean, as far as the constituents that I've been in contact with, they see no issue with it.
I just want to second what both of them just said. Actually, when I got elected to this position, people were asking me, "Oh, are you still going to work your job?" And I was like, "Well, it's not paid. It's volunteer. That's not why I'm doing it." So, on some level, I think people just sort of expect that we, you know, do get paid. And to what Don said, I think it's really important that we open up government for all income levels. And I could absolutely see for a single mother or father, it'd be cost prohibitive to be able to come to a meeting if you didn't have family or weren't able to afford childcare. So I see it as a very small incentive for lower income people to maybe want extra, you know, to take this opportunity to have it. So that's kind of what I've come to the very hard decision about.
And that was kind of, Dawn, what I had when you said that. I'd not considered that, because me personally, and I spoke from a place of personal decision at the last meeting, that I don't need that money and don't want to be seen as needing to be paid in order to want to do this work. That I like volunteering because I believe in what the city is about and the direction that it's going, and wanting to see it continue in that direction. Same time, there are perhaps, I mean, there certainly are people that are not in such a convenient position as myself, that I have people who are willing to watch my son, so I can be here and help make decisions and that kind of thing. So I think perhaps, yeah, anything that we can do to allow people outside of our own positions of privilege to be able to do this as well, I'm definitely in favor of that. So thank you for saying that. I appreciate that.
Well, the last meeting I voted in favor of this, and I've liked what I've heard from our two new commissioners, as well as you, Jeremy. I think it's important that, none of us really need the $250 a month, but it does open the opportunity to people that might need that and maybe make their decision to run for commission one day. So I like what I've heard tonight, so I'm still in favor of it.
So Darren, we had talked a little bit about the possibility of not accepting the money and leaving it up to a commissioner to do that. And as the ordinance stands right now, there's no such provision in there. Would something like that need to be entered into it for it to, or how would that work?
We could write the ordinance a number of ways. My suggestion would be to leave it just like it is. It's extremely simple, and without tweaking it, you can also go back to, we just honored the previous ordinance that was passed by the previous commission. All of you, however this money comes down, even if you were to waive it somehow, it's going to go through a payroll tax. So it's going to, you're not going to avoid any of that happening. So if you do not want the money, all you have to simply do would be to donate it or handle it however you want at your own discretion. And if that changes during your tenure on the commission, you wouldn't be bound by anything else. So I would suggest you leave it just like it is, pass it, and then do with the money whatever you would like. And if, I know the finance director's in here, I've talked to him a couple of times about it, but I know Henry's been waiting on it probably more times than he ever thought he would on one ordinance. But that would be my suggestion, but we could obviously listen to any suggestions any of you had if you wanted to do something else. But that's the simplest way, and I think it gives you the most flexibility to do what each of you would want to do.
Sounds fine to me.
All right. Are there any other questions, discussion regarding the motion? If not, I will seek a motion for approval.
I move to approve.
I second it.
Been moved and seconded to approve the motion for Commissioner Pay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right. Non-agenda reports and requests. Do we have anything?
Mayor, I don't believe we have any. The one thing I think we ought to follow up on, we have a new commission. Wayne and Megan came in under public input, and sometimes public input, I think, is lost on the general public, because usually we'll just have somebody that's not on the agenda come in and express their thoughts, and then people wonder what happened. So just to be clear, what will happen is we will go back tomorrow with the appropriate staff, and I think the gentleman that Wayne was referring to isn't here tonight, so obviously we're not going to have a large discussion about what happened. We will clarify what happened. We will get back with Wayne specifically. We will address whatever needs to be addressed through the city business, and then if there's anything that comes out that needs commission action, it will definitely come back to you. Either way, we would be happy to report back to you how it ended up, but I want everybody to know we do follow up with people. This isn't a vacuum. Just because nobody stood up and we didn't have a large discussion doesn't mean for people thinking, well, I'd like to go to City Hall and talk about a problem that I have, but I don't want to just have the place go silent when I sit down and that's the end of the meeting. We will take action on that. We will follow up, and I appreciate you guys coming in, and encourage anybody else that feels like, whether they've approached the city or not, that there's something that needs to be done on their behalf to do it. So I just thought that maybe be a good thing to say that we normally don't say, but so people understand that we do take it serious, and And we do appreciate you coming in, so thank you.
Well, I would like to be apprised of what happens with this too, because I
Absolutely.
feel strongly that there's an issue here. And I appreciate you all coming before us, and I'm sorry it had to take this long to get it worked through.
Other than congratulations on your first meeting, and here we go.
All right. If there's nothing else, I will take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we be done. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Didn't think so. We are adjourned.
Good job,
Good way to put it.
Are they all like this?